Just a quick disclaimer, I'm using a modded version of Secret of the Mimic, so if you see things that look different, that's why. Anyway, on to the video.
David, I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1.
Why does it look like that?
Look like what?
It's scary.
Oh, it's an endoskeleton. It won't always look like this. It'll wear fun costumes.
Like what?
Anything you want. It can fit into any costume we've created. Think of it as your new babysitter. But it doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us.
I fucking love Secret of the Mimic. It's hands down the best FNaF game, and I'm so glad that my favorite villain in the series gets the justice he deserves. The story is tragic and well told, the game is horrifying and unsettling, and the MCM facility is so well designed and an expertly done craft of level design akin to other Metroidvanias, and the gameplay is so much fun. Actually, about the gameplay, I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about the core gameplay of the game, because believe it or not, the game isn't just chase sequences in the Tiger Rock section, although I do love them both too. The core gameplay is actually stealth horror, and the game does it in spades. So today I want to go over why sotm has the best gameplay in the series, and why it's such a good evolution of FNaF. Okay, so before I go over the full gameplay, I do want to talk about how expertly the horror, whether intentionally or not, is introduced. When you start the game, you are told,
always being mindful of the fact that this entity could potentially be inside any costume or character that you see.
And even though you are literally told this, when you then meet the Mimic in both an elephant costume and Jackie, both of them are scripted to play out the same. So then you might think, these are all gonna be scripted, aren't they? And then you walk into this room. Aww. So yeah, it turns out the Mimic can be literally anything it wants to be. Even things you wouldn't think come to life can and will. And this is the first point to the horror and fun of sotm. It's randomization. You see, in Security Breach, the Glamrocks would spawn behind you pretty much every time, which would make the game become very dull, very boring, very fast, as you would always do the exact same things in the exact same way to get away from them. It also didn't help that the Pizzaplex was so fucking big that they would just wander off and get stuck like Joseph Biden. sotm doesn't do either of this. Because of the random chance of the Mimic spawning, it can either be in front of you, behind you, or somewhere else entirely. MCM is also made way more tightly so he can safely and easily navigate around the space he's put in. The randomness of the costumes he chooses always makes it to where you'll never know what suit he chooses or what will spring to life, especially when there's like 50 different costumes and all of them look creepy as hell. The sound design is also incredible. While it uses a very similar stinger system to Security Breach, because of the randomization I brought up a second ago, the Mimic uses these sounds a lot more sparingly, and thus it makes it a lot more ominous when it plays. Like, imagine you walk into a room and all of a sudden, the Mimic himself also sounds incredibly creepy. Like, take a listen. The servos are very robotic and mechanical, and despite the suits looking so uncannily alive, it'll sometimes make these low, unrecognizable growls or these monstrous gurgling noises. Nothing feels human about the Mimic, and that works wonders to trigger that little red flag in your head to stay away from it, aside from the fact that it'll kill you, of course. So earlier I mentioned that the core gameplay is stealth horror, and like most stealth survival horror games, the Mimic has a wander, search, and chase system. Now, I've seen a lot of people say it's basic and easy, but I hard disagree. Unlike the Glamrocks, you cannot outrun the Mimic because, well, take a look at what happens if you do. Yeah, this bitch moves at the speed of light. You have to be sneaky or you will die. Now, what's nice is that he isn't guaranteed to hear you when walking. You just have a higher chance of being detected if you do. So you don't have to crouch all the time, which is nice because it prevents the game from feeling too slow. That being said, you should still absolutely take your time and use the environment to your advantage. Most rooms have noisemakers everywhere and the Mimic will gun to them if he hears anything. That being said, there's kind of a problem. Some of these noises will actually fuck you over. Take, for example, the chains. Like, imagine you're trying to not get caught and suddenly this is like perfect horror right here. Genuinely straight out of a horror movie where the protagonist bumps into something that made the slightest noise and the monster goes right after him. This causes the player to have their fight or flight mode go into overdrive, except for one problem. You can't fight this thing. So the best thing you have to do is hope that there's a place to hide like a locker. Another noisemaker out there is these cutouts that you can find that'll play this creepy tune that the Mimic will also follow. Another problem. They have a random chance to go off on their own, and yes, this could happen if the Mimic is in the room. So you better pray to God you aren't nearby one when it does that. This is like the perfect use of RNG because it'll absolutely scare the hell out of you as the Mimic goes to that thing that just alerted you. But like with the shades, you can still hide from it if you're quick and stealthy enough. And the last of our noisemakers I want to talk about is these little shits. These rat things are essentially an easy way to have the Mimic go to a spot you want to. One teensy beatsy problem though. You have the throwing strength of a midsummer ant, so there's a high chance that it either bounces into a spot you didn't intend to, or it ends up at a spot way too close to you. So once more, you have to be stealthy. That being said, this doesn't mean they suck. Hell, if you noticed, all of these noisemakers I mentioned before have their uses. Chains, cutouts, and rats all have pros and cons that will actually make you think on how to use them and when to use them, which, true to FNaF, is like using your tools. The only difference is that these tools are actively placed around the map, which actually gives a use as to why the game is free roam. One more tool at your disposal are standard horror game lockers, which can easily get you out of a pinch. Something really nice about them that I wish more games did is that you can actually lean left and right to get a better look at things around you. Although if you've been paying attention, just like the noisemakers, the lockers aren't always reliable. Kind of a hidden feature about the game, but depending on what costume the Mimic chooses, it'll actually have higher chances of checking lockers. Plus, if you get caught and it full sprints at you, it can pry you out of the lockers. This is a great way to still have the player be sneaky, as sitting still and camping in a locker for an hour isn't going to help. Now, to give off one more perfect example of how well all of these features in sotm come together, I actually want to use a very specific section for this. Now imagine this, after escaping the sheer horror that is the White Tiger section, you decide to explore around now that you have the highest permissions in the game. You finally find the locked off entrance that was at the beginning of the game and discover that there's an elevator in the back of the room. After solving a very complicated code, you enter down yet another dark basement. You walk out and end up in the center room with a huge crashed head of what looks to be a moon. If you remember, you can see the huge hole from the backstage of the theater. Unfortunately, to get in this head, you have to solve one of these tube puzzles again. Although, like with Chica, you have to collect these pieces for it to be complete. Several hallways stretch out before you, and unfortunately, you have to traverse them to find these pieces. Plus, you need to grab a nightlight, which powers these hallways. You enter down the dark, pitch black hall, and Sleepy Moon's section is legitimately creepy as hell. The way he slowly stumbles down, taking up the entire hallway, meaning you can't avoid him, gives him such an intimidating presence. The way his head contorts in such a huge smile as the mouth flaps up and down, it's so disturbing. And it's a genuinely evil but genius thing that Steelwool did to have the light no longer be your safe space like it was in the Tiger Rock section. Rather, the light is a sign of imminent danger. And it's especially like this when you have to go back into the maze and grab your nightlight and traverse through the pitch black hallway once more. To see that faint light that moves, just god, it's so fucking scary, but so cool. Gameplay wise, everything also comes together super well. Lockers are way more sparse and there are chains everywhere, meaning you have to be sneaky once more to avoid this thing. While not as fast as the Mimic, the hallways and its size make it damn near impossible to juke it. Steelwool also did a slight subversion of the gameplay too by having it where rather than just having the sound be the important factor of distance, you actually have to pay attention to the distance and brightness of the light to garner how close he is to you or if he's approaching or going farther away. All in all, Sleepy Moon is fucking terrifying, but also an excellent example on how good Sotom's gameplay is. Overall, the gameplay features Sotm adds seem so simple, but all have these little quirks that make him come together into an amazing stealth horror experience. They genuinely translated the management and thinking that the Scott era had and perfectly put it into a Resident Evil styled free roam experience. It also creates these excellent situations that are really tense as you might have a little fuck up and then the serial killer bee is coming after you. But nothing ever feels unfair. There's a very subtle up in difficulty as the game progresses that you probably barely even notice, but when you get to later points like R&D at Edwin's house, there's a ton of noisemakers and way less places to hide from the Mimic. Especially with R&D, which basically gives him full sightline across the entire room. It is genuinely genius what Steelwool has been able to pull off, and I'm genuinely so glad they were able to make the game they wanted to make without the hurdles Security Breach brought them. Anyways, that's about all I wanted to say. I kind of wish I could make like a 5-hour Pyrocynical video about the entire game one day, but unfortunately I just don't have the time or money. So hopefully this video is enough to show my love for this game. I think the gameplay is often overlooked in any FNaF game, especially with Sotm, because people just care about the lore and nothing else, which is kind of sad because video games are meant to be played, but oh well. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to do the YouTuber shill thing, and I'll see you all next time.
David!